Now we all know, don't we, that a golf swing has lots of rotation. We can see the body rotating in the backswing. We see these videos and images of elite players, you know, really kind of twisted through the ball at impact. So we know rotation goes on. But just trying to copy that sends most of us in completely the wrong direction. There's a way of rotating or creating rotation healthily, and then there's using heavy amounts of transverse rotation, which is not what we want and will absolutely wreck your swing. Let's have a deeper dive. So when we look at elite level players move, you know, the girls and the guys on tours, we know there's a huge amount of rotation in the backswing, you know, 90 degrees, often more with their rib cage, with, you know, their shoulder turn, if you like. And then through impact, they somehow seem to have rotated all the way back. So the hips are pointing in this direction, and even the rib cage has turned to be open as well. The problem lies in, you know, when you and I think about rotation, what kind of motion does that evoke? Now I know for me, when I think about rotation, you know, if you were to ask me to rotate my body, I would do this. That for me is rotating. And I'm calling that transverse rotation. So transverse rotation is basically rotating around a vertical axis like a discus thrower. But that motion clearly doesn't look like an elite level golfer. In fact, it doesn't even look like a golf swing as I kind of slightly exaggerate it. Rotation in the golf swing is far more subtle, and it has to involve a combination of other forces as well. I don't think it helps when we kind of learn with drills like the club across the shoulders. I mean, it does get us rotating, but there is a heavy sort of dominance of this transverse plane type of rotation. So I was recently in a gym with our fitness coach, amazing fitness coach James Griffiths, who you'll have seen on the channel previously, talking about shoulder connection and handstands, etc. And he said, and we were working on a pattern that's really useful for golfers. And intuitively, he grabbed like a pulley system. It wasn't one of these, but it was something similar, and started sort of pulling it around the body. You can imagine these sort of systems in the gym, these cables, just pulling it around in this manner. And he must have seen the look on my face as he stopped. And I said to him, James, I think that's probably the last thing that golfers need to be practicing. I think most golfers have a ton of that anyway, and we need to be getting a better mix of other forces into their swing to create the right balance. And James's response was, really? Because in the world of personal trainers and fitness, that's what a golf swing is. A golf swing is heavy rotation in that manner, heavy transverse rotation. And I think that's probably the case for most golfers as well. I think that is just a big misconception, that golf is played like this. And we don't get to see some of the other forces that go on in the swing. So let's look a little bit deeper and see if we can learn what creates that look of rotation, because it's definitely not this. So if it's not transverse rotation, then what is it that we're seeing when we see all these amazing players, you know, twisting their bodies? Well, it's more a combination of forces. So there is, you know, in the backswing, there is a front to back pulling of the feet, and there is an up and down. So you can see already as I add front to back, much like a walking pattern. So if I'm walking like so, and then I stretch to the camera and back again, you can see that my rib cage is now actually rotating. So as my left hip moves back, my right shoulder comes forwards. That is rotating more like a swimmer. And there's a video I'll link below where we talk all about how to rotate in the backswing. But essentially, there is more of this front to back, push-pulling, and also an up and down style motion, much like Pete Cowen's concept of the spiral staircase. Again, I'll link that below. So we're not just rotating, we're moving up and down with that trail hip, and we're moving front to back. Now with the up and down, we also get in downswing, we get a drop, and then we get a push off that trail foot in that direction.
Quick location change then. This is my other coaching venue, which is Monterey Golf and Country Club in the East Algarve. And I'm just getting ready for one of my trips. And as you can see, they really kind of spoil me out here. This is our private grass range for my guests, and we've got short game over there. Monterey is continually voted the #1 course in Portugal. It is absolutely epic. The trips are 5 days. There's only 7 guests because it's really coaching focused, so we need to make sure everybody gets their due attention. But it's good fun as well. It can't just be serious coaching, can it? So 5 days, 7 guests. I run the trips in kind of October, November time, and also February, March. If you fancy joining me, I'd love to see you out here. Details are below.
So back to that conversation I had with James in the gym then, it took him, I don't know, less than a minute to kind of grasp, oh yeah, that is not the golf swing. The golf swing ultimately needs to drive force in that direction. And then he set me up with this exercise, and I thought this exercise was especially cool. I'll move out of the way. Cool in the way that it just really connected me to using my legs differently in a way that didn't feel like rotation in any way. But you can see as I make that punching move, there's a real sense of the right side driving forwards and moving the left side out of the way. So he sort of connected me to this sort of cable pulley, and rather than trying to push, rotate it, he's got me practicing a punch. Bear in mind, I've never thrown a punch in my life, don't judge me. I'm definitely driving off that trail foot and driving the force laterally, and my front foot is pushing back and allowing me to kind of move the force through in this direction here. That is much more like what we're trying to do in the golf swing. And again, if you've seen any of my Pete Cowen videos, that is one of his concepts. The left side moves out of the way as the right side kind of drives through like so. It is actually the right side that drives the left side out of the way. But we can do it in an even more dynamic way. So the way that works with the feet then, if we use these force pedals to try and understand that, I've got a wedge on the floor there, and I'm going to put the ball of my lead foot against the wedge and that force pedal. Now to push my lead hip back and behind me, I am pushing in that direction, and of course the force is sending that lead hip back behind me. Meanwhile the trail foot needs to be pushing. I'm going to imagine I'm driving this mat. I've sort of put it on the wedge of the mat. I'm driving this mat behind me. Hold on, push, pull, front to back force. That is that idea of a force couple. So you may have seen this elsewhere, this demonstration, but I think it works really nicely. So you know, if we're screwing a top off let's say a jar, a jam jar, etc., then we're going to put our thumb on one side, fingers on the other, and what we're doing to get that twisting action is applying a backwards force with the thumb and forwards with the fingers, and we get the twisting motion. So it's that same idea of a force couple, so the front to back forces with the feet, that creates a lot of the rotation in the golf swing. And that combination of pushing laterally and in that direction with the right leg while pushing in the other direction with the lead leg is going to give me that sense of lateral force, vertical force, and a real sense of rotation, but not by rotating the body in this manner. A big giveaway for me when I'm looking at a player's swing in terms of how they're creating rotation is what I see happening with the club through impact. In a swing that has this kind of transverse rotation, you'll see what I just did there. You'll see how the club is also rotating. It has too much of this torque going on through impact. So it's like the club is almost kind of squared with this use of the body in this manner. I'll see if I can't demonstrate that. A real sense of kind of yanking it around. Again, what Cowen would call outside rotation. Whereas, done well, we see the arms whipping past that front foot. There's space for the arms to be traveling through. Again, the force is moving in that direction, and the front foot is acting more as a brake to whip the club past. That's this kind of action as opposed to this kind of motion through the ball. And you can see there, that's an entirely different torque on the club and will really affect your club speed, but massively your face control as well. Okay, so to round up then, what we're saying is, there's different patterns that you can connect to, but what we don't want is a really kind of heavy dominance of this transverse rotation, both in backswing and in downswing. Backswing needs to be forwards and backwards and up and down, and the downswing needs to be more about driving the force in that direction and also creating some of this vertical force as well. And all of that needs to connect to how we're pulling and releasing the handle. Now, in the follow-up to this video, I went to see a good friend of the channel, Dr. Mark Bull, one of the top biomechanics in the game, and he gave us some valuable insight as to how rotation is created in the swing and again, some patterns to avoid. I've also created an online course, which is linked below, again, as to how we create all these kind of forces, getting the right balance of forces through the body. But until I see you next time, good luck, play well.